What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's another brand new episode of Liam Picks Fights. I'm glad to be back. We didn't have the fights going like normal last week, no UFC action, but now we're back at the Apex. A little bit of a weird show, right? We're dealing with the fact there's no media in attendance, no fans in attendance. You know, a little bit of Fugazi business, Dana White with the dodgy answers. What's new there? But I think that overall, it's an entertaining night of fights ahead of us. A lot of talented fighters are going to be on this slate. So I got a great guest to break down these fights. Man, myth, legend, friend of the show steps up on very short notice and tells me he's down game to break down some fights. So without further ado, the great and powerful, lucrative MMA, James Blissett in the house. And I'm sure you guys know James already. All his information is in that description box below. One of the best out there. James, how are you, brother? Welcome aboard.
What's up, my brother? Yeah, happy to be on talking these fights with you, man. You know, we almost went for an hour, or we could have gone for an hour before we came on because we're both hyped up to talk about these fights. Honestly, can't believe you're super hyped up. It's 2:30 a.m. I thought you'd be fast asleep by now, but you know me. As you can see by the background, to be honest, I'm a traveling man. You know, as you can tell by the map. And so in Australia, it's only 10 to 5 p.m. here, you know, so I got all the time in the world, bro. I know most of the people watching will be probably up at 3, 4 a.m. like you. Hopefully we can bring them some jewels for staying up this late and rocking with us. So appreciate you for having me on and appreciate all the viewers for watching.
Absolutely. I say it each and every week. I mean it each and every week. Sharpest chat in the game. I'm always learning something from the people that are here commenting. So appreciate what you guys have to say. A lot of people already in here waiting for the show. So thank you guys for being here. We will not keep you waiting any longer. We could start with the first fight of the night. And James, you might have to talk me off a ledge here, but I feel like I am almost obligated at this point to bet on Guido Cannetti, right? And the reason being is last time out, you know, I was saying going into the Chris Mutino fight, and you guys can go check the receipts on Pub Sports Radio. I was saying, you know, just because he went out there and went 3 rounds with Sean O'Malley, don't think that this guy Chris Mutino is just going to stand in the pocket with Guido Cannetti and turn out okay. Because if you're saying this guy's got a rock chin because I saw him get punched in the face a million times, that rock chin's not going to last. And Guido Cannetti, you know, they say the last thing to go is power. He goes out there and swings heavies, right? What's the biggest thing that you knock on older fighters? They got poor cardio. They can't go the distance. Yeah, neither can Randy Costa from everything that we've seen so far. So for me, you've got this blown out favorite line on a guy that hasn't proven all that much. He's got a couple quick knockouts over fighters that haven't projected very high in the UFC. And other than that, his claim to fame is that he, you know, landed a bunch of hard jabs and busted the nose of Adrian Yanez. He had a significant height and reach advantage in that fight. Yes, it's impressive because it's Yanez, but what if he can take, you know, 40 punches to the face in this fight from Guido? I'm talking about Guido Cannetti and still be there. Is he able to win the fight? You know, I think he is. So I think there's a chance that Guido Cannetti just gets flatlined here. He's 42 years of age. I'm not ignorant of that fact, but I do think that in terms of skill, in terms of what they've proven in the octagon, in terms of time, sweat investment, you know, Guido Cannetti's been around the UFC since The Ultimate Fighter in 2014. And, you know, he's fought a bunch of good guys. He hasn't been the most active fighter in the world, but even still, going out there and getting wins at 41 years of age, what's to stop him from getting one more? I think they've matched him appropriately in terms of the lower end of the division. Either one of these guys could win, but I feel like it should be a little closer to a pick-up. How do you feel, James?
Yeah, look, man, I'm not going to swing you off this dog shot because there's no way in hell that you can be laying minus 300, minus 330, whatever it is on Randy Costa, right? It's almost impossible. The guy is proven to be 6 minute or bust. You know, we won't call him round 1 or bust because he comes out hard in their first 30 seconds of that second round. You know, he had Brandon Davis a little bit on skates within like 30 seconds of round 2. So we'll give him 6 minutes, yeah? We'll say that he's got 6 minutes of cardio and then he just completely combusts. So if that is the fact, which it is, it's very hard for him to ever cover a minus 300 price tag. Because even if he gets a first round knockout, he's not even necessarily covering the minus 300 price tag there. Because how many times does he get that first round knockout, right? It's very hard to say. Look, in this specific matchup, I do think he gets the first round knockout, right? So Guido Cannetti likes to stay on the outside of the octagon, not engage too much, every now and then throw a very hard body kick, throw a very hard straight. That's really what he wants to do. He doesn't want to grapple. He doesn't want to shoot a takedown. And he basically doesn't want to do anything that Randy Costa hates, which is forward pressure, eating shots, dirty boxing, the clinch game, takedowns, grappling, all of this sort of stuff that makes Randy Costa tired. Guido Cannetti does nothing. He doesn't do any of it. So for that reason, it's so hard for me to back somebody like that against Randy Costa. Randy Costa is kind of like, his perfect opponent is kind of like Guido Cannetti. It's someone who's going to stay on the outside and play a long-range kickboxing match with him. In my opinion, Randy Costa's going to fuck him up, and he's going to knock him out in round 1. I do think that's going to happen, but you can't be laying minus 300 on him. The money line side has to be Guido Cannetti, but he just does nothing that I'd want to see in a fighter that I'd want to back against Randy Costa. So I can't do it myself. But like I said, I'm not going to hate on it because the dude is round 1 or bust. One little caveat I'll shout out before I finish is that if you are going to play Guido Cannetti, you might as well put a 0.1 unit on the round 2 knockout, because anytime Costa's ever been finished, it's been in round 2 by knockout. He gasses out after 5.5 minutes. If it happens again, Guido Cannetti's probably going to put him out, even though he likes to dance on the outside of the octagon. He's probably going to see that Costa's so tired, and he's probably going to knock him out. It's like plus 2,000. So even I'm intrigued in that a little bit, even though I think he's going to get his head knocked off, So Randy Costa round 1 is my prediction. But hey, good luck to you if you back it, because he doesn't deserve to be minus 300.
Yeah, man, he's basically just really good at throwing a lead jab and a head kick, So like maybe he knocks him out with that, but I just feel like he's a self-combust kind of fighter. And so Guido Cannetti, if you look at the stat line, and the stats aren't always predictive, right? He hasn't shown it in a lot of recent bouts, but he is averaging 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. Would be wise of him to just go out there, try and attempt those early, even if they don't work, just try and get him working at a high pace rate early. I think if they're both tired, the person with a little more grit and toughness, despite being 42 years old, might be our fellow Guido Cannetti. So I think it should be an interesting fight here to kick off the night. The second fight of the night is also a little bit more interesting as you peel back the layers here. I was watching Chelsea Chandler tape before I came on the air tonight. That was part of the reason why I wanted to make sure I did my due diligence, and I watched the fight that she lost, that first fight of hers. For me, that's a little bit scary for her coming into this fight, to be frank. That was a fight where it was blue belt versus blue belt, and she got pretty summarily out-grappled for MMA purposes, right? She was the attacking fighter. She was in a lot of dangerous submission attempts, and I'm talking about dangerous submission attempts for her, where she was locking her opponent's arm down. She had a deep triangle choke for like 2.5 minutes. But for me, that was number one. Little bit of a problem in terms of not finding the finish there. Granted, first fight, give her a break, but like she had a lot of really dominant positions. A Kimura that was like behind the girl's back, doesn't finish any of them. And then, in that same fight, she basically cost herself by giving up bad positions, by getting hurt with ground and pound, by getting hurt on the feet. She got dropped with a right hand. She claims she slipped in her most recent bout, but again, rushes in after landing a big shot of her own. Stumbles down, falls, turns around, almost gives her back, did give her back to that blue belt opponent that I was talking about before. So for me, there's a lot of grappling concerns that I have, despite the fact that she's a very good and potent offensive grappler. I think that, she's a purple belt. She's still learning. She's still making mistakes. She's still growing. I think that Julija Stoliarenko is a more proven grappler at this stage of their careers. And for that reason, I think that she's a deserved favorite here. I haven't loved how the market's been moving, so I have no action on this fight as of yet. Also hate the fact that they've nerfed this submission line, right? Where it was plus 500 in the last fight. I think plus 950 in round one. One of my favorite bets that I ever hit was like a $2.50 parlay on Jalen Turner round one sub and Julija Stoliarenko round one sub. And that was like, just two people, same card, really like both of their method in the same round, fired it away. And it was just a silly little play, small one, but big win there. And, now the Stoliarenko sub props have really been nerfed down. And I think this is a much more competent grappler that she's going against, right? I think it would be much more difficult for her to find that submission here. However, there was a ton of disadvantageous positions for Chelsea Chandler in some of these fights where she's getting taken down, where she's giving up those bad spots. And, there's a lot of meanness in Julija Stoliarenko. If she gets on top of you, she's normally looking for that armbar. I would not be surprised if she tried to unload with ground and pound, tried to hold on to top position. So I think that Stoliarenko could win this fight and maybe break that streak of just armbar wins. But it should be a competitive fight. I don't think Chandler's a pushover. I think the 140-pound catch weight makes it a little more interesting, where she's not going to deplete herself down to 35 like she did for that first fight. But for me, just a very compelling matchup here in the early prelims for women's MMA. A lot of people shit on those matchups just inherently. I think this one offers a little more intrigue. How do you feel, James?
Yeah, good fight. It's definitely going to be a barn burner. It's definitely going to be a banger. I'm not really sure we're going to go away from this fight and say, oh, that was a boring fight. It's very hard. I'm not going to say impossible, but it's very hard for me to see that fact. I think it's going to be a barn burner. I think both girls are extremely aggressive. Chelsea Chandler's extremely aggressive. Julija Stoliarenko, extremely aggressive. Stoliarenko, obviously, much more battle-tested, UFC level competition. She's very violent, very aggressive, as I said. She fought in left way, right? Which, if you know, is that sport where Liam definitely knows, because he's just gesturing for the headbutt. And that's what the sport is, right? It's based around headbutts, or headbutts are allowed. A lot of times you see these fighters doing pad work. They hit the 1-2 hook and then they come in with a headbutt. It's pretty insane, She fought in a promotion that allows headbutts. The only way you can win is via knockout. If you do get knocked out, you get 5 minutes to be revived from the knockout and you can continue. Absolute brutal sport, right? Over there in Myanmar, Burma, they made it tough people over there. If she fought in that sport, as a woman as well, she's obviously a violent girl, right? A brutal girl. And you can see that in her fights, because she stands in a pocket, throws heavy shots. She gets rocked from time to time, but she very rarely gets finished. I think she got finished like twice in a second or third fight. And then she had about 15 fights in a row where she didn't get finished. And she fought some tough girls, UFC competition, 5 UFC competition fights. She had 2 on the Ultimate Fighter back in the day. And then finally, she was stopped by Julia Avila, right? So I say all that to say this. The girl is extremely tough. She's weathered in the game of combat sports, not only MMA. She's fighting Chelsea Chandler, who is the complete opposite. She's had 5 MMA fights, none in the UFC. She's very, very new to the game. She's been training for a while, but she's a lot newer than Stoliarenko. I think if the going gets tough, Stoliarenko is going to have that advantage there. She's going to have a little bit more grit, a little bit more determination. Although I think Chelsea Chandler's kind of a copy of Stoliarenko in that fact. She is aggressive. She is tough. She is going to, fight through tiredness, injury, that sort of stuff. I kind of feel like Chandler has the advantages in terms of the skill set. I think she's probably a bit of a cleaner striker. I think that she probably has better takedowns. I think she probably has maybe better top control. But there's a lot of intangibles that Stoliarenko has, right? Like I already mentioned, the toughness and the experience and stuff like that. So I feel like this fight probably finishes one way or another. I don't really want to back it at like plus 110, just because both girls are extremely tough and I'm only getting a 55% outcome. You know what I mean? So I'm not really rushing to back a women's fight plus 110. Fight doesn't go to decision, or fight doesn't go when a lot of their fights have gone before. I'm going to pick Chandler for this fight. I think she's a better fighter in general, her skill set. So I'm going to say she gets it done. I think Stoliarenko gives up some bad positions on the mat, just like you said Chandler does, man. I really think Stoliarenko, she's an armbar whiz, as we can see. 7 armbar wins in round 1. So she's obviously live always to get the armbar. But she's going to be pushing the grappling when she can. Whether it be clinches up against the cage, whatever, they're going to have their hands on each other. Chandler's going to be pushing the grappling when they can. And both girls are pretty strong. Both girls are pretty tough. I think Chandler's just a little bit stronger in them grappling realms. I think she's proven to be a decent jiu-jitsu fighter. I think she can put Stoliarenko in some bad positions here. I think Stoliarenko may get tired from the grappling. She kind of got tired in that Julia Avila fight a little bit. I think Chelsea Chandler, I'm going to pick Chelsea Chandler. I'm not too convinced on who's going to win. I will say, though, that I did take a poke on Chelsea Chandler via submission. It's actually an insane price at the moment. At some point, you could have it at 20-1, right? Which is just insane, in my opinion. It's about 14-1 right now. You yourself already mentioned that Chelsea Chandler, you've seen her have multiple submission attempts. She's got a one submission win out of like 4 wins. She knocked the girl down with a brutal shot there, and then she got a submission after. But Stoliarenko's been subbed in the UFC before. She can potentially get tired. They're going to be in the grappling for most of the fight, in my opinion. Submissions are gonna be there. So for me, Stoliarenko submission is 3-1. Chandler submission is 14-1. Lower level. For me, it's a no-brainer. I'm taking Chelsea Chandler via submission at 14-1. But in terms of the win, I'm going to pick Chandler, but I'm not too confident on the money line at all. Anyone can win this fight.
Yeah, man. And the market would tend to agree. Pick 'em price seems appropriate. Both these girls are going to bring it. Should be a violent fight. And yeah, I really wouldn't be stunned to see either one of them get submitted. I do think it could be a high volume grappling exchange, but I think that, the problem is when you have a lot of grappling success, it opens up these positional TKOs. And I think people count those out, especially in women's MMA. These girls are mean. Like they're not here to just, win fights. They're here to hurt people. So I would not be surprised to see one of them get to a dominant position and start unloading with ground and pound. And with that being said, guys, we can move along to the next fight here on the card. We've got Maxim Grishin taking on Philipe Lins. And, I think based on the placement on this card, you can kind of tell where the UFC is at with these guys. They're like, all right, boring fighters. People don't care about them. Put them on the prelims of a fight night card that won't be viewed by a ton of people. They're just trying to bury these guys. Like, this is not the most entertaining fight in the world. Neither one of these guys brings the most dynamic fight style. You've got Maxim Grishin. He's pretty consistent and reliable. He goes out there. He throws a lot of shots. Occasionally he lands shots that are impactful, almost knocked out Dustin Jacoby on multiple occasions, but Dustin Jacoby just finds that second will. He finds a way to deal with those difficult shots. He did the same thing against Iwan Kutalaba when he was on the ropes. But I think that, this is the kind of fight where I would not be surprised to see Philipe Lins find takedowns and get on top here. Seems like that's his game plan. I listened to a couple interviews. He was talking about I basically realized, why am I going to fight all these big guys at heavyweight? I'm not that big. I'm smaller than these guys. I'm going to move back down. I'm going to go to light heavyweight. I'm going to start taking people down. And that seems like a good idea for him. I don't think he's the most potent striker on the feet, but I think that the overall grappling and wrestling in the light heavyweight and heavyweight divisions is pretty poor. We see that borne out over time. And so this is the kind of opportunity, I think, for Philipe Lins to go from being, a really subpar heavyweight with few paths to victory to maybe having, an outside chance of winning a couple fights in this light heavyweight division, keeping that career and that dream alive. And I think that for Maxim Grishin, he's normally done a pretty good job defensively, but he's had lapses in the past. He's been submitted before. Hasn't really been tested by many great grapplers in the UFC. Had a lot of stand-up kickboxing matches, at times even been more physically dominant than his opponents. Maybe that's the case here, but, I'll be honest, I thought Lins looked like he was on some supplementation at the weigh-ins. When I saw the photographs, my man looks very good relative to some other weigh-ins he's had in the UFC. He doesn't look so doughy. He looks like he came in shape for this fight. Take that for whatever it's worth. Maybe he had more asparagus. He said his prayers, all those things. I think that, maybe we see an improved version of him in this fight. I don't believe in either one of these guys upside long-term as prospects in the division, just a little bit on the older side here. And I don't know that they have the dynamism to really move up the ranks. The UFC likes finishers. Neither one of these guys is a huge finisher, but one way to open up finishes is to get on top of a guy, make him tired. I think Grishin has slowed down a little bit in some UFC fights. And the way to make a guy who's a primary kickboxer tired is to just grapple him. And I saw 4 takedowns on the stat line in the Marcin Prachnio fight, but I also saw that when Prachnio got right back up to his feet on the first attempt, he wasn't discouraged. He wasn't broken by that. He was like, okay, now I switch stances again, mix it up on the feet, bob and weave, and then go for another takedown, clinch up again, and repeat the same process. I think if he does that here, he could win this fight. So I would be considering it a dog or pass situation. Seems like all the action's been on Grishin pretty much, and the line, is kind of found a stopping point, minus 180 or so. Hasn't really drifted far out past that, and I think that's interesting because everybody seems to like the guy. But the line kind of found that point of resistance, I think. And I think that's probably sharp. What do you think, James?
I echo a lot of your sentiments on that fight. I think you spoke about some solid things. Linz's potential grappling upside here. We've seen Grishin taken down multiple times now. We're no strangers to seeing Grishin taken down. Now, we haven't really seen him controlled, as much as maybe we would like if we wanted to be on the Linz side. But at the same time, like you said, Linz won't be discouraged, right? So maybe he won't get top time the first time. He's not going to be discouraged. He's going to be able to mix it up. And I think he can keep it competitive on the feet as well, Like, this is a good fight. I mean, you know what? It's not really a good fight, actually. What I mean is, like, it's a competitive fight, I think, right? I just feel like Grishin's obviously the better striker. He's the more seasoned guy. He's more of a veteran of the sport. He's just probably better at MMA. He's way more experienced. I respect Grishin because he's had a lot of fights and he never gives you an easy fight. I had quite a solid bet on him against William Knight last time out, and he made that look easy. And like, you're never going to have an easy fight against Maxim Grishin. That just doesn't exist. You're not going to go in there and just dominate him. Like, he's a tough fighter, right? He also moved down from heavyweight. Same like Philipe Linz, so the size isn't going to be too much different in this fight. Linz has got good boxing, fast boxing. He'll hit you 4 times before you can hit him once. But other than that, he doesn't really have too much to ride home about. I don't think he's a great fighter. Maybe at light heavyweight, he's going to become this new fighter like you're talking about with the wrestling upside. And we saw that in the Prachnio fight. So that's interesting going forward. I know a lot of people are on Grishin here because he's just a better fighter, right? But the better fighter doesn't always win. A lot of times in the octagon, especially at this level, it comes down to fight IQ. It comes down to game plans. It really does. We've seen the better fighter lose every single card. A better fighter loses consistently. It happens all the time. So I feel like Grishin's the better fighter, but I definitely see a big path for Linz to win this fight. Make it close on the feet. The boxing can be close. The striking, no one's going to blow anyone out of the water. Do you know what I mean? I don't really think someone's just going to dominate someone on the feet. Now, if anything, maybe Grishin could knock out Linz because Linz, I don't think he's got a great chin. We've seen him hurt multiple occasions now. Even Arlovsky buzzed him a couple of times. And I mean, you don't really want to be getting buzzed by Arlovsky, but Arlovsky can crack every now and then, that little overhand he does, but I feel like Grishin, has the finishing upside potentially. He's a tough motherfucker. But in terms of the money line, you have to side with Linz just because of that takedown threat. The light heavyweight dropped. He looked decent in his last time out. Grishin fading a little bit probably. He's getting on. He's getting older now. Man. For me, I'll go with Grishin. He's a better fighter. But in terms of the money line side, which everyone knows is completely different, when you're betting on someone and you're picking them to win. Absolutely different thing, right? I'm going to say Grishin gets the win. He's just a better fighter. He should really win this fight. But Linz is has got the betting upside. Philipe Linz for sure.
I tend to agree, man. I just think that it's a little bit dangerous to lay chalk on somebody if they don't have that dynamism, if they don't have that finishing capacity. And like you mentioned, maybe Philipe Linz gives him that door because his shin's not great, but I don't envision a world where Maxim Grishin subs him. So I think the submission upside probably has to lean towards Linz. I mean, with all due respect, it's 205 pounds, right? They're swinging around leather. Either one of these guys could go down. Grishin's shown a little bit better durability historically, a little bit more natural at that light heavyweight class, but they're swinging heavy. So somebody could easily go down here on either side. There's a little bit of volatility baked into the weight class. And, light heavyweight's been one of my better weight classes historically, just because a lot of underdogs win. A lot of guys are able to cash even in weird scenarios because people get tired, people get hurt. And I think that in a matchup where neither guy is exceptional, dog or pass situation. So with that being said, we can move along to the next fight here. Speak about neither guy being exceptional. Golly, I couldn't have said it any better. Brendan Allen taking on Krzysztof Jotko, said with all love and respect, but I think these are guys that are, going to be perennially stuck on the outside looking in terms of that top 10, top 15 kind of bill. I know a lot of people are high on the Brendan Allen experiment. Maybe it ends up panning out. For me, I'm selling that. That's not something I buy into, but I'm not buying Jotko stock either. I think I had a small ticket on Gerald Meerschaert the night he lost to him pretty comprehensively there. And the credit to Jotko is that he just knows how to win a decision. He knows how to navigate a fight, knows how to pace himself, and he does a lot of things well. But are there scary visuals in a lot of Jotko fights? Yes. Do I have visions of him getting out grappled at points by Uriah Hall? I do. Do I have visions of him getting buzzed in a couple fights? Yes. There's not really a lot of dynamism in his game, right? I was just discussing in the last fight how it's a little bit hard to get behind the Grishin side when I'm not seeing him get those finishes, when I'm not seeing him show that huge danger factor. I mean, geez, Louise, Krzysztof Jotko has shown virtually no danger factor, even in fights where he has a wide margin of skill. But Brendan Allen has shown that vulnerability, like you mentioned with Philipe Lins, where sometimes this guy, Brendan Allen, just gets overwhelmed and gets hurt and gets finished. And I think that, sometimes people get a little bit one-way traffic in the way they think about even how a bookmaker would think of this fight, where the bookmaker is thinking, what is everybody going to bet? I think the most bet prop on Jotko will obviously be Jotko by decision. But maybe Jotko could find a knockout in a fight like this where he's going to be in a stand-up exchange with somebody like Brendan Allen who's shown a little bit of fragility on the feet. That being said, coming back the other way, Jotko hasn't always shown the best durability himself when he's faced with power strikers. Brendan Allen in some of these fights has shown, pretty decent power behind these body kicks, especially somebody with that long torso like Jotko. Maybe Brendan Allen could find that big shot. So for me, when you've got these two guys that might want to mix it up in the grappling, it could end up being a striking affair that plays out as a close contested decision. I think that's the broad narrative for how this fight's going to play out. But when two guys are standing on the feet striking, in this middleweight class, again, I won't be surprised if one man falls. And especially both these men are going to be desperate for a finish to kind of move their way up the ranks. Otherwise, they're going to keep languishing on the prelims of small fight night cards like they're doing right now. And Brendan Allen at one time, I think, was viewed in a lot higher light. Same thing with Krzysztof Jotko. He used to be a ranked fighter. So for both these guys, I think it's going to be pretty critical for them to get the win here. How do you feel about this fight, James?
Yeah, this is a hard fight to predict, on the money line side to say who's going to win it, because I feel like it's going to be a closed, janky fight. Both fighters are probably going to have moments. Both fighters are vulnerable in terms of being reversed, being out-volumed, outclassed a little bit on the feet. No one really puts a big stamp on rounds. Like Brendan Allen is much more of a finisher, right? Like he looks way more dangerous in terms of finishing ability. But other than that, they don't really ever put their stamp on rounds and make it clear. Like you said, Jotko could be winning a fight, easily in the grappling and he'll just get reversed or something. Or like Uriah Hall will do some janky stuff in the grappling and you're like, oh, Uriah Hall reversed him. And it's just not a good look. So it's hard to trust either of these fighters. Yeah. Same thing with Brendan Allen. He'll be looking good. He's very up and down, Brendan Allen. Yeah, speak about Brendan Allen for a little bit. He's very up and down because 1 minute he looks like a pure striker, and then the next minute he looks like a pure grappler. And then the next minute it looks like he's got great durability against Punahele Soriano when he's eating overhands in round 1, and then the next minute he's getting knocked out by pillow fist Sean Strickland. So it's kind of tough to get a read on Brendan Allen in general. I mean, we thought his takedown defense was all right. He was a good grappler himself. He reversed position a few times on Kyle Dorcas. But then he got taken down about 9 times by Jacob Malkoun. And I actually bet on Jacob Malkoun decision there at like plus 900 or something. So rest in peace to that one. I know a lot of people had that bet as well, and that was quite tough watching that back this week, as it always is. Every time we do a weekly tape study, there's always like 2 or 3 fights where we watch and we're like, do we really have to watch this and sit through this pain again? Jacob Malkoun decision was one of those against Brendan Allen. So Brendan Allen is this up and down guy. He's hard to get a read on. In my opinion, though, he's got a higher volume than Krzysztof Jotko. I think like he's probably a better striker on the pads. You know, like technique for technique. If you watch them hit the pads, I'll be like, yeah, Brendan Allen's a better striker. That doesn't always translate. You know, he's probably got the worst chin, you know, of the two. So that doesn't always translate. But I do think Brendan Allen has some advantages. I feel like he's just maybe a bit more hungry. I feel like his tenacity is higher. I think his finishing upside is more. I think his risk, I think the risk that he takes are more, which probably is a good thing in this fight because Krzysztof Jotko probably won't capitalize on those risks that Brendan Allen takes. Whereas if you're fighting Chris Curtis, you take one bag risk, you step in the pocket, you're going to get knocked out, or someone like Kyle Dawkins, for example, that went his way, but he was in a few bad positions there. So yeah, man, I feel like Brendan Allen's probably going to weasel some type of split decision, but I think it's going to be close. I think Jotko's going to have his fair share of the fight as well. I don't really have a strong take on this fight. I do think it goes all 15. I don't think either guy has much finishing upside. Brendan Allen has a lot more, but Jotko, he's pretty good at playing it safe, especially if he gets hurt as well. So I feel like it's going to be a close contested decision. Then why do you want to bet a plus 100 number or something? So for me, it goes for decision. For me, it's a close decision. I'm going to take Brendan Allen because I think he has more ways to win, but I'm not confident backing it with my money.
I'm with you, man. This is a fight where originally I was a little more bullish on the Jotko side, and I'm going to just wait and see and kind of play this with my gut because I don't really have the strongest, inclination to play either one of these guys. I did feel like my initial lean was to Jotko, but I don't historically back these guys. I think I've only bet against both of them in their UFC careers since I've been doing this. So for me, it would probably be a favorite or pass situation here, but I'm probably just going to pass on the fight entirely. And the next fight here, I do have a small position on this bout, so I don't mind leading off with that. We've got a lightweight bout here between two guys who are probably fighting for their UFC contract. I mean, realistically speaking, and man, for me, this was a bet that I came to basically because I watched some grappling contests outside the UFC, outside of mixed martial arts, and there was a CFFC, or maybe, I think it was a Fury grappling event where Neil Magny actually was grappling Neto BJJ. And if you guys listen to my breakdown for why Shavkat Lakhmanov was going to submit Neil Magny, then you heard that Neto BJJ just a few weeks earlier, months earlier, whatever it was, had submitted him with that very same guillotine setup. And he's very good at it, right? And I think that Neil Magny is a much bigger guy than Jesse Ronson and probably a little bit more proven in terms of defensive responsibility in the grappling. We saw last time he kind of got audited by Rafa Garcia in his defensive grappling, and Rafa Garcia is not a prolific finisher in his mixed martial arts career. He was able to get the finish in that spot. Looked like a little bit of a depleted version of Jesse Ronson down at 155 pounds. So the question is, what does Jesse Ronson look like in this subsequent outing? And for me, you're hanging plus 750 on a guy to win by submission who literally just submitted Neil Magny. He is called Neto BJJ. My man is very high level on the ground, and we just saw Ronson get audited on the ground. And that just seems like a wide number to me, given those parameters. So for me, I took a quarter unit shot on the plus 700. It's as high as plus 750. Sharper markets have it around plus 400. I think that's more appropriate. So yeah, for me, small shot on him to win by sub. I think, the reason he's favored is just because he's got those more paths to victory. Both these guys a little bit questionable on the durability side. I think Neto BJJ's chin is falling apart quick. That's why he's out there doing grappling contests. But, the fact that he's out there doing them up a weight class and making it look easy, He got that submission very quickly and in dominant fashion. What's to say he can't come do that at 155 pounds against less proven grapplers in the UFC? I think that's all interesting here. I actually had a bet on Jesse Ronson his last fight, and I was disgusted by what I saw. So I crushed the closing line too, James. That was the worst part. I think I got him at underdog odds. He ends up closing, minus 140 favorite, something like the same number we're seeing now, and it didn't end up working out so good for him. What do you think about this fight?
Yeah, I too had a bet on Jesse Ronson, and man, I posted before the fight like, yeah, I'm backing the better fighter here. I got Jesse Ronson at minus 110, and I posted on Twitter, yeah, I've got the better fighter in this fight. And then obviously he gets beat, he gets choked out, and everyone's like, ha ha ha, better fighter, right? I was completely appalled by that fight, just as you was. I was watching it thinking, who is this guy that I've bet on? Because it's not Jesse Ronson. It wasn't the Jesse Ronson I saw on tape, I don't know what that was. Maybe that was because he was coming off a drug suspension. That probably played a part. And that's why you can't really get behind Jesse Ronson in this spot. Maybe it was because of the weight class. Maybe it was because he just had an off night at the office, like we all do sometimes. Whatever it was, it makes it very hard to back him in this spot, right? I didn't dig too much into this fight. I don't care too much about this fight. I have no want to be backing Neto BJJ, Silva, because he's a little bit chinny at this stage of his career. He's pretty inactive as well. He was once a decent fighter, but he doesn't shoot any takedowns. So he doesn't really go for his best path of victory. And honestly, the submission line, that's solid. I looked at it as well. I was going to play it as well. The reason I didn't is just because the guy doesn't shoot takedowns. It's like he doesn't want to be in the BJJ. He loves swinging in the pocket. That's what got him knocked out against Ricky Glenn. I remember he got that brutal knockout over Jared Gooden, right? And he couldn't sub Jared Gooden there, but Jared Gooden's a very good jiu-jitsu practitioner, especially for MMA, right? So
two deep submission attempts on our boy Jared Gooden.
Yeah, so we'll give him a
Jared
pass
Gordon,
there.
excuse me. Jared Gooden's the middleweight.
Gordon. We'll give him a pass there because obviously we know that his BJJ is very solid. Gordon, I'm talking about, right? I mean, he went to a decision and he won against my boy Joseph Selecki. And Joe Selecki had his back for the whole first round. And let me tell you that you don't survive a back take from Joe Selecki unless you are high level on the mat. So, I mean, shout out to him. So, Neto BJJ not submitting him, all right, we give him a pass. But he doesn't shoot takedowns. He doesn't go to his best path of victory. So, it's so annoying for me to see that as a sports bettor, wanting to bet him by submission, wanting to bet on him in general, but then he just doesn't go for the submissions or he doesn't go for the grappling, right? So, I hope for your sake he goes for the grappling in this fight. For me, I've got no play on the fight. I'm not going to have a play. It's a massive pass. If anything, you take a shot on a big plus money, like plus 700, plus 800. You don't put money on money lines in this spot because there's so many unknowns. There's so much volatility in this fight. Out of any fight on the entire card, in my opinion, this fight, biggest volatility. Because of the drugs thing, because of the weight class thing, because of the fighter who apparently was Jesse Ronson last time out, because of the potential chin fade, because of the 30-second knockout of BJJ, all of these things. There's a lot of volatility in this spot. It's more of a show me spot where I like to watch the fight and I want to see how they perform. And maybe in their next fight, I have a better read on who they are at this point in their career. But hey, hopefully you get that submission because we need to get one back on Jesse Ronson for fucking us last time out on our bets and our CLV, right? So if you can get back that 7.5 to 1, then at least you would have done it. So good luck to you. For me, I'm passing on the fight. I'll pick Silva submission, as a gesture of goodwill to you. Good luck to you. Touch wood.
My brother, I appreciate you for it. I would love if that could come through. Nice plus 700 ticket for the homies. And I just think that, there's a little bit of value on the number. We just saw Jesse Ronson get submitted. We know that this guy's capable of it. The reason they're not pricing it into the line is because he hasn't done it recently. If you look at his MMA results, but if you think a little bit outside the box, you could see, outside he's leaning into his grappling off the mats and, submitting a UFC welterweight. If he had done it in the octagon, people would not have the same submission price in this spot. It's as simple as that. So with that being said,
I just asked a quick question. Because you may have it up there now. I didn't know the sub was 7 to 1. I didn't think it was. Is it 7-1 on like your bookie, or is it 7-1 market wide?
So right now, most books are holding some variety of plus 550, plus 400, plus 450.
Okay.
And it's a discrepancy on Bet Rivers and Unibet,
Right.
two books out there. So I hit it at plus 700 on Bet Rivers New York, and the line has actually gone up to plus 750.
Yeah.
God, they might pull another quarter unit out of me, these guys. I might just have to go make another play on it because I think, there's a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioners on the card. Some of them got to lock up these subs, and I think one that people might not be expecting is Ronson to get submitted here because a lot of people think he's going to win by knockout in the first minute. I just question what happens if he doesn't. And I think that would make my prop live. So if he gets knocked out on the first punch, it won't be the first time. I had a nice Gavin Tucker ticket the night he got one punched by Dan Ige. So if you think you can break my heart, if you think you can break my spirit with one knockout, you don't know me. So I'm willing to take the shot here on a guy with a janky chin because I think his submission upside is huge if he gets the fight to the ground. So next up, speaking of guys with submission upside when they get the fight to the ground, it just might not happen here, right? You look at Ilir Latifi. He's had a lot of UFC fights, man. 100% takedown defense. I think John Anik put it best describing this guy. He called him a backyard shed. That is the perfect description for Ilir Latifi, man. What does he do that's good? Man, I don't know. He just wins fights. He's just big. He's strong. He throws. He can wrestle a little bit, but really, what are you going to do to him? It's hard to move him around. If you're a quick, agile striker, if you can come in and out of space, you could really expose him for a lack of skill, for a lack of depth, and a lack of craft. I don't think we're going to see that from Alexei Oleinik. I mean, at this stage of his career, at this age, I talked about it in my breakdown for this fight. You got a former light heavyweight taking on a former middleweight, and most people don't know that, but it's like, Alexei Oleinik's been around this game so long. He's had like 3 different weight classes. And he's at the point where he's the much, much bigger fighter, despite the fact that he's the one coming up 3 weight classes. So I don't imagine that body composition wise, we're looking at a perfect athletic specimen in Alexei Oleinik. I'm sure he's carrying a little bit of extra, weight around the edges there. And on top of that, if you guys have ever seen an Alexei Oleinik fight besides the Verdum fight, the guy between rounds has both feet up against the cage. He's having a heart attack, right? He's in cardiac arrest if the fight gets to the second round. And I'm having people tell me, like, I think Alexei Oleinik might win the decision. I'm like, guys, he's going to be having cardiac arrest if the fight gets to the second round. And maybe he can recover from the cardiac arrest and submit somebody like Mo Green, who has what I like to call cigarette cardio, and shout out Mo Green for that. But it's like, outside of that, I don't see him making many more rallies at his age. And so despite the fact that Ilir Latifi is not very good at anything, I think he's got a good chance to win this fight by shocking knockout in the first round, by just coming out, swinging a couple heavies and nuking this guy. I think that would take people by surprise. I also would not be surprised if he just laid on him and nothing happened for the whole 15 minutes and it was gross and ugly and they shake hands after and Alexei Oleinik calls it a day. I could see either one of those results happening. So for me, it's going to be difficult to submit Ilir Latifi. I think people are saying it's impossible to submit Ilir Latifi. Guys, stop. It's Alexei Oleinik. Anything's possible. Okay, the guy does crazy, remarkable things. If he gets the mount one time, do you really think Ilir Latifi is going to be like, no, I'm going to get out of it? He's going to quit. All right, that's going to happen. I hate to say, but I don't think it's going to happen because again, he's built like a shed. So a guy like Alexei Oleinik trying to get on top of him, I think he's going to struggle to do that. I think he's going to struggle to close the distance a little bit on Ilir, who I do think is just a little bit more nimble at this stage of their career, a little bit more fleet of foot. It's not like you got one peak athlete and one it's two guys from the bottom of the barrel here in terms of athleticism. But I do think that Ilir is just a lot closer to that prime, and he's a little more physical. So I think that Ilir is going to get the win here, but I don't feel the same kind of confidence that some people do in the market. And especially trying to lean into one of these props. A lot of people are like, yeah, I really like Ilir to win by decision. He's only landed X amount of punches in his last couple fights. Do you see the guys he's fighting? Like, what is he going to stand and trade with Derek Lewis? Is he going to try and deal with Tanner Boser, who's like, quick on the outside? Every guy who's ever fought Tanner Boser is trying to hold him down and get on top of him, except Cyril Gane, who just beat him pillar to post. I'm sure you know that, but just for the homies that don't watch the tape. But either way, right? I think that when I look at these two guys, Ilir Latifi, a lot closer to physical prime. Got to go with that. Lucrative. How do you feel, my brother?
Yeah, I don't know what guys you were talking about, but I'm going to have to tell you as well. I think Alexei Oleinik has a decent chance to win this fight via decision. And I'm going to take it one more. And I'm going to say, how would you like it if I told you that I think Alexei Oleinik can win a 15-minute kickboxing fight against Ilir Latifi in the cage this weekend? Because I think he can do it. Look, both guys leave a lot to be desired in the striking realm, right? Let's just talk about the striking first, because when we're speaking about MMA, there's lots of intangibles, but mainly it's based around striking and grappling. That's it, right? Striking, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. That's really all it is. There's nothing more. Many intangibles, but, to the naked eye, right? So we speak about the striking. The striking is close here. Oleinik can outstrike Latifi here. You said someone had a cigarette cardio, right, against Oleinik. But Oleinik's facing Latifi.
Maurice Green.
Yeah, Maurice Green, right? He's got cigarette cardio. But you know what Ilir Latifi has? Cigarette volume. This guy doesn't throw a punch to save his life. Look, he'll be a 5-minute round, and he will throw 5 strikes. 1 strike per minute, and that strike will be an absolute Hail Mary. And he will land it. You know what I mean? Like, he times it. He just doesn't like to throw strikes, right? He'll be getting picked apart, and every now and then he'll throw a big hook, a big uppercut, whatever it is, right? He doesn't like to throw strikes, got very, very poor volume. I think Alexei Oleinik can, out-volume him here. I think the old man can out-volume Ilir Latifi here. I don't think that's a hot take. I feel like he can. I mean, even against Sergey Spivak. Sergey Spivak, a lot better fighter than Ilir Latifi at this point in his career at heavyweight, right? Undebatable, yeah? He was, at points, he was rocking Sergey Spivak. He was winning minutes on the feet against Sergey Spivak. He was coming forward consistently for 15 minutes. He looked absolutely dead between rounds, but then he wasn't dead in the rounds, and he was coming forward. I just feel like this is just an absolute shit show of a fight, and you got one guy who's like plus 160, plus 170. I kind of feel like Oleinik is clearly the money line side. If Ilir Latifi, with his style, is going to cover the minus 170 price tag or minus 180, in my opinion, he has to get a first-round knockout. I don't think he's going to lay on Oleinik for 15 minutes because I think Oleinik's janky enough to get some sort of reversal. I think he's good enough in the jiu-jitsu to muster some sort of reversal up. I also think that Oleinik he's probably a bigger man. He's got that old man strength. Could probably defend a couple of takedowns. Can make it janky, this weird type of fight where Ilir doesn't just lay on him for 15 minutes. And even if he does, I feel like the fight is going to be extended. So I feel like the fight that goes to decision at like plus 180, plus 200 or whatever it is a decent bet. In my opinion, they're really just avoiding that first round. I feel like if it gets over 5 minutes, it probably goes 15. So yeah, Latifi may get the first round knockout. Oleinik's chin it leaves a lot to be desired. But, the people who knock Oleinik out, usually they're not these slow, lumbering strikers. Chris Dorcas, where he hits you 15 times in 1 second. Ilir Latifi is not that. I think Ilir Latifi may land a big shot, but Oleinik potentially may be able to weather it. He took some big shots off Doom, and he took a couple of shots off. He took a lot of shots off Spivak as well. I just feel like once we get past that 5 minute, it may go 15. So for me, Oleinik decision is plus 750. Look, when I started off this breakdown and I said to you, Oleinik's can win a decision, right? Part of the reason I'm saying that is because Oleinik via decision is plus 800. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily because I'm predicting Oleinik to win a decision outright, gun to my head, what's going to happen. It's because they're saying, he's going to win this decision. And if he wins, we're going to give you 8-1, right? So for that reason, I had to throw a little bit on Oleinik decision. I think Oleinik is the money line side in general. I think he can get nuked early, but I like his volume better. I like his pressure better. honestly, I probably like his striking for MMA a little bit better, which is something I never thought I'd be saying. So yeah, I'm going to go with Oleinik here. Old man, he gets another win in the UFC. He's obviously got the submission upside if he gets there as well, which Ilir Latifi probably will try to get it there. So there's a lot of favorable things for Oleinik in this matchup, in my opinion. So I'm going to take him. Natural heavyweight. There's a few things I like with Oleinik here.
I definitely hear you, but for me, I even thought that Ilir Latifi could have won the Derek Lewis fight. I thought that was a very debatable decision, and I feel like Derek is so much more scary. I feel like he's so much more intimidating where he needs to get the fight to the ground. So everything was like panic. Same thing with Tanner Boser. He's like, I can't see out of my eye. Like if I don't hold this guy down for my life, like I'm going to, lose the fight. So he just tries to pin him. I feel like he might have a little bit more comfortability in this kind of matchup. And I do just think that, from what I saw, I don't rate Oleinik's cardio at this stage of his career. I do think that Verdum fight was a little bit of an outlier performance. I also think Verdum looked like shit in that fight. Just calling it like I see it. What's that?
Spivak fight? He went 15.
That was impressive to me, but I also thought that Spivak fought like a complete scaredy cat. Like I thought that he actually could have pushed the fight a little bit harder and finished like pretty easily if he just got in the guard and passed, but it's a nerve factor and he's not as experienced as somebody like Latifi. I don't think Latifi will be afraid to take down Oleinik. I do think he will be willing to do that and able to do that, especially in the early going. So those are the kind of things that for me, it's one thing when you go to the ground knowing everybody's afraid of you. I think that it's a little bit different if some, just big lumbering dude takes you down, lays on you, and then you're sitting there reevaluating life choices at 44, like, shit, I'm under the backyard shed. This is how I envision it. But, man, I wish you best of luck because I don't have any tickets on it, and I always like to root for an underdog. But this man, Alexei Oleinik, it's like I can't get on the right side of this guy. Sometimes I've bet him in the past. He instantly dies. I think I even bet him against Derek Lewis that night. He had a couple good positions, but it was that sheer athleticism. Derek Lewis, blue belt jiu-jitsu, goes like, and just like gets up from the ground. I could see Ilir doing something like that. That's why he's very difficult to submit. He's just a hoss. There's nothing really technical about it. He's just very hard to control physically. And anybody who's spent some time grappling knows what I'm talking about. There's some people that are really technical, and there's some people that are extremely physical, and either one can be an asset. So with that being said, speaking of people who are extremely physical, Mike Davis back and looking beefy as ever, man. But this guy Slava's looking big too. He's pretty tall. Looked a little bit bigger than Mike in terms of that height and maybe that length. But Mike, looks a little bit more like the athlete, the dynamic guy, fast twitch. He's got a little bit more of that muscle definition. Maybe a little bit more lactic acid buildup. Could see a little bit of slowing down from him in that 12 to 15 minute mark. But I think we see him historically push a pretty good pace. He's fought at a really high pace, and so slowing down is natural in those spots. I think he's pushed an extremely high volume out in those spots. And this is a really fun one, man, because, I'll be honest, I went to UFC Columbus with high expectations for my man Slava. I was like, man, Mark Diakiese's on a rough run. I was like, this guy likes to come out there and strike. You don't want to come out there and strike with Slava. And he did not come out there and strike. He came out there and wrestled, grappled, and he got after him. And I thought that was a really good game plan. I thought it showed, some smarts and some adaptation. But Mark Diakiese, made me sick. I was sitting there watching it. There was no attempts to finish. There was really no attempts at what I would call like effective fighting offense. Like it was mostly just wrestling. And I like wrestling. I got a wrestling t-shirt on. I did wrestling for 10 plus years of my life. I love it to death, but there's wrestling and there's fighting, and you got to use the wrestling to put you in a position to fight. And I'm not sure that we really saw that from Diakiese. It was pretty grind out, stalling performance. I should have went to get popcorn. Anyways, this is the kind of fight here where I think Mike Davis is the kind of guy who's going to get in your face. He's going to push the pace, but he also mixes in his wrestling, his grappling, his takedowns. Mason Jones, His last fight, he got badly hurt on the feet. So he was controlled on the ground by Ludovic Klein at times. I think he was kind of just trying to get his wits back about him and get his bearings. But historically, he's been pretty tough to out-grapple, to out-wrestle. He's competed at 55. He's competed at 70. He's got a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. So he's no slouch, right? And Mike was able to get a couple of takedowns on him. Wasn't able to control him, wasn't able to beat him up, but got some takedowns, got some control, and was able to outland him as well. So I feel like there was a lot of positives in that fight. The inactivity is a little bit of a problem for me in terms of this big money line indication. But what I will say is I like Mike Davis by submission in this spot. I don't think that he's going to be the same kind of passive fighter if he gets this fight to the ground. I think he's going to be a little more aggressive. I think he's going to look for submission opportunities. Slava is tough as hell. He's been rocked and hurt in a lot of fights, but he tries to fight through it. He tries to grab a hold of you. He tries to do anything he can to stay in the fight. I think that we could see a club and sub opportunity present itself. I think we could see Mike Davis come out here and be intelligent, pursue takedowns early, get them easily, and potentially pass the guard and finish. I think that he's heralded by his friends, teammates, people that know him as a very good jiu-jitsu player. He has one submission win via Kimura in his career. That's kind of a power move. That's kind of a move that you could pull off if you're on top of somebody physically dominating them. And, we kind of saw Slava get dominated physically by Mark Diakese, who's not a supreme A1 athlete, in my view. And, to the extent that he is, hadn't really shown that kind of dynamism or grappling upside against anybody else in the UFC. So all those things lead me to have some open questions on the Slava side. I do think he's extremely dangerous on the feet. His body punching is nasty. He could easily finish anybody with a liver shot combination. But I just have a feeling that it's going to be takedown city here for Mike Davis if he knows what's good for him. And I think if he does that, he could tire out Slava and potentially find that finish. I hit plus 1050 on the sub line for Mike Davis. And again, that was a line on Bet Rivers. I don't know if I'm wrong or if they're wrong, but we're gonna find out by the end of the weekend. I thought that was another play worth having. So James, how do you feel about this fight, man? I think it's one of the more compelling matchups on the card.
Yeah, I think at 1050 they're definitely wrong, man. I also looked at Davis' submission. Can't remember what it was, but it wasn't enough for me to pull the trigger at that time. I like Davis in this spot. I've never really rated Slava. I just never have. I don't think he's a great fighter. I know there's a lot of hype on him. Dana White's Contender Series guy, big knockout on there, viral knockout, viral moment, lots of advertisement. He does that little dance after he wins. There's a lot of viralness to him, right? Even when he got that big knockout against Dakota Bush. But I've never really rated him as a fighter. I don't think he's very good. I backed against him. Chris Duncan on the Dana White's Contender Series, who just won again and got a contract on the Contender Series. So he'll be in the UFC soon. I lost there. I felt like, the tide was turning in that fight. The takedowns were coming. But the guy fought like an idiot. Basically stood with him for most of the fight until he got hurt, which was a terrible decision. Lost my money there. But I got it all back when I backed Mark Diakese against Borshchev. I got Mark Diakese at like plus 135. And it's not often you can get an underdog who in a rematch potentially could be line minus 900. So, I was extremely happy with that. And the reason why I bet on both of those fighters, lost 1-1-1, is because the guy is, Borshchev is basically an offensive striker. That's it. He's not a good defensive striker. He's got a bad chin, in my opinion. He's not a great anti-wrestler. His jiu-jitsu is whack. And I mean, what else is there to say? Like, I don't think he's a good fighter. Mike Davis has all the advantages in this spot. I mean, if he doesn't win this fight, he needs to really evaluate his game plan badly, because I think the only way he loses his fight is if Davis has a terrible, terrible game plan, which is to stand in the pocket and trade. One thing I will say is that the guy does like to stand in the pocket and trade, right? So there is some credence to Borshchev in this fight. If Mike Davis comes out here and wants to test himself against the striker, he's going to give Borshchev a lot of opportunities to crack him in the boxing, because Borshchev has extremely tight hooks, extremely good liver shots, body punches. We've seen it time and time again. He can hurt you with those short-range hooks. So we've seen Davis hurt with short-range hooks before, notably in that Sodiq Yusuf fight. He got dropped badly in that fight. I know he's never been stopped, but that fight, if it went another way, there's another world out there where Sodiq Yusuf does stop him. He's obviously very tough, but got dropped heavy. I think he went straight down. Referees are taught that when a fighter goes straight down, it's a very big warning sign and you should potentially step in soon, right? I've heard Herb Dean talk about that. The way you fall is very indicative of how hurt you are. If your hands don't go down to stop your fall, this type of stuff. And the guy just went straight down. You know what I mean? So he got hurt by the same punch that Borshchev loves to throw. So there is some worry there. But if Mark Davis has got half a brain, he'll just shoot takedowns from the bat. Even on the feet, though, I think he's a better striker than Borshchev. People might crucify me, but go and run the tape. Go and watch what happens, because I'm not talking about offensive strike. I'm not talking about the better pocket boxer. I'm talking about the better MMA striker. Davis is a level above Borshchev here. Davis can knock out Borshchev on the feet here. Believe you me, people are talking about, Davis has to grapple in this fight. Davis can knock out Borshchev on the feet 100%, right? I think he's a cleaner striker. I think he's a more diverse striker. And I think he's a better MMA striker. Borshchev is a much better pocket boxer, in my opinion, right? And that could be his downfall here. But other than that, Davis has him covered. Davis at minus 170 was undervalued, was a bit of a steal, in my opinion. Laid a couple units on it myself. I'm hoping he mixes in the takedowns, but even if he doesn't, I think he can knock him out on the feet. I think he can keep it close until he does steal the rounds with takedowns. The only real worry is the pocket boxing and the potential cardio dump in round 3. But for me, it's Davis all day, and hopefully he gets a submission for both of us.
Love it, man. Absolutely love it. I think that is a great fight, and I really look forward to that among a lot of great fights on the card coming up. They're going to kick off that main card with a bang, and the next one up should do the same. We got a catchweight bout at 140 pounds here. John Castaneda, fresh off that big upset win, plus 195 on the money line. Cash it. That was a nice spot there against Miles Johns. Now he's taking on Daniel Willie Cat Santos. Santos coming off a underdog loss against Julio Arce. Did bet Julio Arce in that spot. And for me, it was pretty elementary. Just a guy that had been around the UFC for a long time, talented guy. He's been on the wrong end of a couple of tough fights. He's lost to some really good guys. But if you put him in there with a guy who's not ready, he could really make them look bad, and that's what he did. He made him miss. He made him, walk onto a lot of big shots, and showed his toughness, showed his heart, showed his cardio. He was able to keep coming forward and swinging, but Julio Arce just showed it was a levels difference in that contest, and so the line was probably appropriate there. Whereas Castaneda has been a little bit underrated by the market. The difference is, it's one thing to bet somebody as a plus 195 underdog. It's another thing to bet them as a minus 185 favorite. It's like a complete flip in the market. And, is the quality of opponent like such a significant downgrade? I'm not sure about that. I think that certainly on the feet, Miles John's biggest credential was grabbing Kevin Natividad's glove and hitting him with a big uppercut. I mean, he landed a lot of big punches in that fight, but the closing shot there was just completely a cheap shot. And then, meanwhile, Daniel Willie Cat Santos, he has shown he's got a lot of power on the feet on his regional scene. Looked like Julio Arce respected what he was throwing at him. A lot of it was missing by a wide margin, but he was throwing it with a lot of commitment, a lot of intent. And Castaneda, it's been a long time, but he was knocked out once in his career. So I do think that that's on the table. I think that's a possibility. I don't think it's a high percentage outcome. I think that Castaneda, my question is just if he's able to wrestle here. If he's not able to wrestle, I think it becomes a much more interesting fight. I don't think his striking defense is as good as his striking offense. I think that that's a criticism you can make of a lot of MMA fighters. I just think that this is a guy you don't really want to mess with on the feet too much unless you're levels above him. I don't know that he's levels above him. I think it's a little bit more competitive. I think he's, he would not be a favorite against Julio Arce today either. John Castaneda is a good fighter. He's on the come up, but still kind of getting his feet wet in the UFC. So for me, the loss to Nathaniel Wood, also a little bit instructive. Nathaniel Wood is on a great run right now, but got out volume there, got overwhelmed by somebody who's willing to come forward and swing at him and really put some pressure on him. And I think that, we might see a little bit of that from Daniel in this fight. So For me, wasn't convicted enough on John to lay the wood here, but I do think he's going to get the job done in a gritty decision. What do you think about this one, James?
This should be a good fight. It should be a bit of a banger, honestly, because both fighters will bang on the feet. Both fighters are pretty tough as well. Both fighters are durable. So I think they're going to meet in the middle, and it could be a good fight. I do probably see it hitting the decision, even though I do think they potentially will meet in the middle and throw some heavy shots. It's funny because Daniel Santos was quite that, what's the word? Maybe overvalued in that Julio Arce fight, because when he's coming into, if a fighter's coming into their UFC debut and taking on Julio Arce, unless there's some sort of mega prospect, you usually will see like Arce minus 300 or something, right? You would expect that. But Arce was only like minus 200 in that spot. I don't know what you got him at. You might have even got him at like minus 180 or minus 190 or something. Because I think at some points he was around that number. And so the market was valuing Daniel Santos, right? And I thought he put up a good account of himself in that fight. He stuck in there for 3 rounds. He caught Arce with some good shots, but he was just a lot less technical than him. He's a bit more of a brawler. So he was outgunned in that fight. Now in this fight, I think he's got a lot better matchup on the feet. I think he can definitely win the striking in this fight. I also think Casteneda can win minutes of the striking, but it's going to be a competitive kickboxing fight when it's on the feet. Now, the thing about this fight is Casteneda has the wrestling upside, I don't understand, though, how people can be backing Casteneda if they don't think he's going to grapple or if they're not sure if he can grapple. Because I've seen a few people backing Casteneda minus 200 here. How are you going to back him at minus 200 and think he covers that in a kickboxing fight? I mean, it's silly. I know he knocked out Johns, but I mean, Johns is a bit of an idiot, And his chin ain't that good. If he's not wrestling, he's not good. You know what I mean? He's just a wrestler with an overhand. He's nothing special. It was no surprise Casteneda dominated on the feet. I think Casteneda has to grapple to cover his price tag here. I feel like he probably will, but who the fuck knows? Also, Daniel Santos has plenty of experience going against these grapplers. He fought a couple of fights in ACA, ACB. As we know, Russian promotion, most of the time, those motherfuckers are just grappling you, right? And that's what happened in Daniel Santos' fights. I can't remember what fight it was. It was either the draw or his loss. But I watched both. But in round 3, he came back after being grapple fucked for the first 2 rounds and dominated in the grappling. So he reversed position and he was fighting. He was fighting heavy in that fight. He was able to reverse position on the Russian grappler who grapple fucked him for the first 10 minutes and he reversed position and won the grappling in the 3rd. So we know that he can push a pace. He did it against Julio Arce in the striking. He did it against the Russian fighter in the wrestling. So we know whether it's wrestling or striking, his cardio is proven in any type of high-paced fight. So I feel like he's a great dog to back in general. And he's coming in here in a fight where I think he can win the striking. I think it's going to be competitive. I think he can probably stop some or reverse some takedowns. And I don't even know if Castaneda is going to shoot them. So for me, I'm backing Daniel Santos here. He's plus 160, a little bit undervalued in my opinion. I think he can get it done, man. And I think he probably can get it done via decision. I wouldn't be surprised by Castaneda winning the decision here. Banking some rounds on grappling. But I would be surprised to see him thoroughly outgun Daniel Santos on the feet. So I'm taking a shot on Santos here.
I like the breakdown, man. And that's kind of how I feel, where if you were to put a gun to my head and say, Liam, it's a 50-50 fight, push me to 51%, maybe I would say Castaneda based on his recent performances, based on the trajectory, the trend. He's been going on an upward, run here lately. But if you're offering it to me at 65, 68, 67, that's just a lot more confidence I have to have in the outcome here. And I'm just not sure that I have that. So it would have to be a dog or pass situation for me as well at current numbers. But Sexy Mexi is a great nickname. So I wish him future success. And with that being said, we can move to the next fight on the card here. We got Sodiq Yusuf taking on short notice replacement Don Chainis. And James, I'm curious what your reaction was to Don Chainis, because I'll tell you what, man, I expected worse. Man. I'm not saying he's great, right? And on the feet, certainly leaves a lot to be desired. My man is willing to go out there and swing. He's willing to trade. He's willing to get hit and throw back, especially with big power shots. He wants to land those. But on the ground, this guy's got some funk, man. Like, he was going against some guys who brown belts, black belts, guys that are pretty credentialed on the ground, and he's hitting the same elevator sweep that you learn your first day of jiu-jitsu on really good guys and using it to take them out. And like, the fact that it worked as many times as it did on the tape is really remarkable, but it wasn't against just complete cans. It was against former UFC fighters. It's against guys that I've seen compete in Submission Underground and other grappling tournaments. So really not guys that are outside the competitive architecture, pretty competitive modern grapplers. And Chainis was doing well. So that for me was a little bit of a feather in his cap, right? On the feet here, got big problems, right? The reason being Sodiq is really long. He's a lot bigger. He's a lot more prepared for this fight and this opportunity. And, I think Chainis, it's a little bit of a blessing and a curse here. He's been extremely active. The guy's just taking fights every other weekend, it seems like, of late. And it's been, working out for him. He's put together a lot of momentum. He's on a solid run. Man, I'm not standing in front of that at minus 1,000. I'll tell you what. And Sodiq Yusuf, yeah, maybe he wins the fight. You're talking about a gun to my head scenario. You look at the face-off, you look at the weigh-in. Of course, you're going to pick Sodiq Yusuf. He's the much more natural 145-pounder here. But you're not asking me if I'm going to pick Sodiq Yusuf at 51%. You're asking me if I'm going to pick him at 91%. 91% is the implied probability of minus 1,000. So you got to have a lot of confidence, right? I always talk about for the average MMA fight, unless there's a significant, massive levels gap, I'm talking about 15% of the time somebody just gets bonked on the head, or they fall over, or they break their leg, or it's like there's just a lot of variance that goes on in the sport. There's a lot of randomness. There's a lot of, oh my God, what happened to this guy that used to have good cardio, just gassed in the first round? Like, weird shit happens in MMA. And so I think that when you're playing into these huge numbers, it's very hard to win long-term. I don't know many sharp players on the Sodiq side this weekend. If they are, they're probably looking at some kind of prop or whatever. I do think he wins the fight, but the problem is just where do you get a bite into this? Where do you want to attack it? I think a lot of people are going to look to the under, but I also think that this guy Don is not going to quit, man. I think he's going to come forward and really try to put a beating on him and try and land big shots and try and take him down. And to be frank, I haven't always loved what I've seen from Sodiq's chin. I've been looking for opportunities to fade Sodiq moving forward. I don't think that this is the one, but if this gets to like 8-1, 9-1, 10-1 comeback on the money line, especially for Don Chainis, it may be financially irresponsible for me not to take a small shot. James, how do you feel?
Yeah, what can we say about this fight? Minus 1,000s in the UFC, you don't bet them. In MMA, you can stretch to like minus 500s, stretch to minus 600s, 85% range. There's fighters out there who are 95%, you get them at 85%, but you don't really bet 91%. Even if you're saying the fighter wins the fight every single time, which you can say, you still have to give 5%. So you can't really say, right? So I feel like at very best, if you're saying Chainis has no shot, he still has 5% shot, right? That's how I treat it. So even then, you're getting like fuck all value, really. You're getting about a couple percent, you know what I mean? So you can't be touching Yusuf money line here. What's there to say, man? Don Chainis is going to come out here and try and shoot from the bat. I think he'll be smart to do that. He'll probably just play into the volatility because he looks like a fighter who loves to do that anyway. He knows he's coming in on short notice, so he's probably going to play into the volatility even more than he would do. Even if he had 12 weeks notice for this fight, he probably still would play into the volatility anyway. So I feel like he's going to come forward, swing heavy hooks, probably dive for the legs early. Yusuf is a much better fighter. Yeah, he's got a bad chin, but it's more of a lottery ticket shot. You're just hoping Chainis lands at overhand. Chainis has got nothing for Yusuf on the feet, Yeah, Yusuf's got a bad chin. Whatever. I think Yusuf probably gets a first round knockout here. I've seen a lot of people. Not a lot of people. The only time I've ever seen anyone speak about this fight, or I've spoken to them in the DMs and stuff, people are like, yeah, Don is tough. He can last over, until the decision or over 1.5. I don't see it like that. I see it like he's going to push the volatility heavy and it's just going to be a car crash. And someone's going to go down, probably Don Chainis. So I bet that under 1.5 here is plus money. I don't really know how you can take a minus money over just because Don is tough, because Don also will play into the volatility. Yeah, he might go in the grappling, but Yusuf is strong. Yusuf is a good grappler himself. Yusuf can probably reverse Don Chainis and get a ground and pound TKO. Or even a sub, you know? I mean, Don will grapple fuck you, but I don't think Yusuf is... Who's going to grapple fuck Yusuf? It's never happened, you know what I mean? Like, Yusuf is a tough motherfucker. I know he's a striker, but anytime we've seen him in the grappling realm, he's performed well. So, I don't know. I feel like Yusuf's probably going to stop him in round 1, and I'm going to probably stop talking because there's nothing more to say about this fight. It's a bit of a squash match, in my opinion, and everybody else's opinion, including the bookies.
Absolutely. And I think that Chainis, maybe he could win some fights at bantamweight, but it's a little bit undersized here for this 145 debut. That was pretty clear at the face-off. So interesting to see how he deals with the size discrepancy, but there's certainly an odds discrepancy. It's one of the widest betting lines that you will see on a UFC card. So best of luck to the big favorite with the pressure that comes with it, Sodiq Yusuf. Next up, we've got Raoni Barcelos, and victory lap, and one of my favorite bets I've ever cashed. 1 unit at plus 425. Victor Henry on the money line. A lot of people, are convinced that Raoni Barcelos is the second coming of Jesus Christ. And truthfully speaking, I think he's a good fighter. I think he's a fun guy. I think he's a likable guy. I don't think he's the greatest fighter that I've ever seen. I don't think he's blowing my hair back as a minus 500 like everybody else, What I do think is that he shows these really credible, interesting wins, the Nurmagomedov win, obviously, it's like a great win for him. But then you see the losses and you say to yourself, man, like, what really happened in that Victor Henry fight? He never got off the pot. He never got going. He just got completely ran over. It was like touch, and he couldn't get out of the way. He couldn't throw back. He couldn't answer. He just got overwhelmed, really. And I thought Victor Henry looked great in that fight. I thought he performed to expectations. I actually thought it was too easy. I thought it was shocking how, simple that bet was in the end. I just regretted that I didn't bet more on it. And for me, it did show that there could be a severe decline here happening with Raoni Barcelos in front of our eyes. Now, with that being said, Raoni Barcelos is the better grappler here. He does have more experience. But how often is he taking the fight to the ground? Not that often. You could argue it's because he went against good grapplers. Fair enough. But even when he didn't go against the best grapplers, when he was going against primary strikers, he's willing to stand there and box at times. And sometimes he's willing to stand there and do fuck all and do nothing and wait and watch the fight pass him by. And he did that against Valiev in round 3 in a really pivotal moment. And there's just too many things for me that are signs of a fighter nearing the end of their career. For Raoni Barcelos, he's a little bit old for this division. We talked about Guido Cannetti, started at 34 on the Ultimate Fighter. It's a little bit different in terms of longevity. We see guys like DC, Randy Couture, people that start with another career in combat sports and come over late. It's a lot different story. That's not what we're dealing with here. We've got a guy in Raoni Barcelos who's had a lifetime of combat, and it looks like it's starting to take a toll on him. Honestly, the UFC did him no favors. They buried him. They gave him horrible matchmaking. They put him on the bottom of cards. They put him on prelims, and they gave him all tough guys. And you know what else they did, James? They gave him all tough guys that nobody's ever heard of except you and me. They gave him tough guys that really aren't going to position him for that run into the top 15 because he's a little bit on the older side. He's not that marketable, and they just want to move on. And so they know how talented he was, and they were like, let's see how much we could get rid of this guy until he's not the same. And I don't think he's the same anymore. So for me in this fight, Raoni Barcelos is obviously a better fighter than Trevin Jones. But Trevin Jones hasn't been better than anybody's beat in the UFC, and he's 2-2. The guy can knock you out. The guy can beat you in a comeback fashion. Said Yakub Kakramanov, that loss is fine. Said Yakub is going to do great in the division. Trust me. That guy's a killer. That guy's a stud. That guy's dangerous. I think that's going to age just fine. He absolutely put a mauling on the next opponent as well. It's like, are we going to talk about that? Basharat, those brothers have looked great. They've performed up to expectations. They've done everything they've been asked. They've shown a lot of skill. They train with really good grapplers. So I don't really hold those losses too highly against him. And all of the circumstances for Trevin Jones have been terrible in the UFC. Rescheduled fight, miss weight this, have to weigh in twice, show up on short notice. There's been no optimal weight situation for him. He's a little bit bigger in terms of the reach here. He's an awkward stylist on the feet. He throws weird strikes. He picks his spots and counters hard. Would it really surprise anybody if Raoni Barcelos is unloading a 6-piece combination and just gets decked with one big shot? Because it's not going to surprise me if that happens. I think Trevin Jones is live till the end, unless you push an insane pace on him. I don't know Raoni Barcelos to do that. So I think if Raoni Barcelos takes this to the mat early when they're both dry, it could look elementary. He could just be the much better grappler. But Trevin Jones is not a slouch on the ground. And I will tell you this, you can go back and watch his regional footage. He was getting his back taken. People would get to advantageous positions. They'd get the mount. They'd get the back. They'd do whatever. And he would get out and take their back and finish them. Like, the guy just had this weird way of coming back in fights that he had no business winning and winning them. And he's done it in the UFC too. And he's done it by split decision. And he's done it a number of different ways throughout his career. Some people, I think my man Ozzy P likes to call them weasels. Yo, this guy Trevin Jones, when it comes to the cards, he could be a weasel. When it comes to winning these fights inside the distance, he could be losing every minute and then cash your ticket in an instant. And so for me, he's another guy I'm looking at as a potential live underdog this weekend, despite the fact that I've never cashed a Trevin Jones ticket on 2 attempts. What about you, James? What do you got?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say well done for betting Victor Henry, because that was an amazing bet. I have to own up and say I was on the Raoni Barcelos side. I think I bet him at like minus 350, minus 400. Embarrassing, he got absolutely dominated, pillar to post there. Honestly, I was shocked at that because he was getting wobbled like every time he got hit by Victor Henry. And Victor Henry is a volume pace striker. You know what I mean? Victor Henry doesn't knock people out, right? So for me to see Raoni Barcelos get knocked from Monday to Wednesday, every time he got hit by a jab and a 1-2 at bantamweight against a fighter who is not a heavy puncher, I definitely took notes on that, right? And so now he's coming in against somebody who can hit for bantamweight. So it may be like writing on the wall. Trevin Jones may get this knockout here, and I'm very close to betting Trevin Jones via knockout at like plus 550. I mean, I think the line's off. Even in general, I think the line's off. It's a tough fight. It's a weird fight to break down at the line because Raoni Barcelos is clearly a better fighter, and Trevin Jones is clearly losing most fights in general, and then sometimes he gets the knockout. So it's kind of hard for me to see Trevin Jones win minute to minute here, but it's also very easy for me to see him get cracked here. Barcelos is going to come in, does what he usually does, stands in a pocket, slips and rips. He's very good at slipping in pocket boxing range. He's a very good pocket boxer. He's very good defensively in the pocket as well. When he starts getting tired in late round 2 and round 3, that's when he starts taking shots. For that first round, he's usually so sharp, man. He looks beautiful. And that's why I think a lot of people are high on him, because that first round, he looks like an enigma. He's floating in and out of range. It looks like he's not even touching the octagon. He's just floating in and out. Very, very good pocket fighter, very good defensive striker. But he does get tired. He does get gassed. He has been getting hurt a little bit more recently. Even Taha had him hurt a couple of times in that third round, and that was 2-3 years ago now, So, look, I feel like Raoni Barcelos is going to be winning the fight till he isn't. I also feel like these guys are just going to stand and trade, man. I mean, Barcelos doesn't really know any other way. I feel like it's going to be a war. Both fighters are going to be landing heavy shots. I think Barcelos has massive upside to finish this fight. Barcelos can easily sub this guy. It's sort of like a black belt versus white belt on the ground. Raoni Barcelos is such a high-level grappler, man. MMA grappler, high-level grappler. He doesn't get his chops because he never goes for the takedowns and he never really goes into grappling. I mean, the dude was climbing all the way over Said Nurmagomedov's back. The dude was twisting Kali Taha up like a pretzel, choked out Chris Gutierrez like nothing. I mean, the dude's shown us time and time again he's a high-level grappler. So I think he can choke out Trevin Jones on the mat. I also think he can knock out Trevin Jones. Yeah, Jones hasn't been knocked out in the UFC, but the dude almost got knocked out about 4 times. You know what I mean? Like, Basharat had him on skates multiple times with the body shots. Timur Valiev basically knocked him out 4 times in one fight. He was just so tough that he was able to withstand that. He doesn't like getting hit to the body. Barcelos will slip and rip to the body. Barcelos also got a great teep to the body. He also throws that teep up the middle for the face kick as well. So, maybe Trevin Jones's hands drop and he comes up top with it. I feel like Barcelos can sub him, and I feel like Barcelos can knock him out. I also feel like Trevin Jones can definitely knock Barcelos out. Trevin Jones is very good in that pocket, which is the exact same range that Barcelos loves to fight at. So for me, I really, really want to play that doesn't go to decision. But because Jones is so tough and Barcelos is like a lot better, I just feel like it could be Barcelos is fucking him up for 15 minutes and he's just tough and he sticks to 15-minute decision. And then Trevin Jones getting a KO, you are kind of relying on Raoni Barcelos getting a bit tired, in my opinion. And you are also relying on Raoni Barcelos' chin being worn down from the Victor Henry fight because he hasn't been knocked out ever in his career. So, it's kind of annoying because stylistically, I really feel like this fight doesn't go to decision. Then intangibly, I kind of feel like this fight could see the scorecard. So at minus money, it's just kind of annoying. I don't know whether I'm going to play it. I'm kind of speaking my thoughts out loud to you and everybody else on air right now if I want to play it or not. I may get to doesn't go to decision. I kind of just like Trevin Jones via knockout more because Trevin Jones is so tough. Raoni Barcelos doesn't go for the takedown. So if Barcelos does win, he probably just fucks him up for 15 minutes. But if he doesn't, he probably gets knocked out by a big shot. So plus 550 is probably a little bit more enticing than the minus 120. So yeah, maybe I'll get to it. That's my thoughts on the fight. Do with that what you will. Seems like you're on Trevin Jones KO as well. I don't know. The way you was talking seems like you definitely are. So if you are, I may join you on that. Plus 500 is a good number. So we'll see. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, man. Basically, the way I feel is that Raoni Barcelos, right? If he did get knocked out in this fight, would you get the same numbers next time to fade him? Absolutely not, right? Because then the narrative would clearly be, oh my God, this guy that we all loved, that we all thought was great, that we all agreed was minus 500, in a lot of fights. It wasn't just that fight, by the way. Like 3-4 UFC fights, the guy was a massive favorite, right? So some people are viewing this as, oh, it's a buy low spot on Raoni Barcelos. But I always think like a bookmaker, and I ask myself, why are they offering Raoni Barcelos at this very low price against arguably the worst fighter he's fought in some time? And I don't think it's because people are running to the window to play Trevin Jones, truthfully, because he's let people down if they backed him as an underdog in his 2 most recent fights, so kind of have a little bit of that buyer's remorse. But I'm not like most people because I'll ride with somebody to the bitter end if I have to. And I do think that Trevin Jones has upside here. I think he's one of the most live underdogs in the card just because of the style. 250 strikes absorbed in his last 2 fights for Raoni Barcelos. That activity level is going down. He's fighting somebody who's 3 years younger, 3-inch reach advantage, fighting from an awkward stance, who throws with big power, who's an unconventional striker. I think Trevin Jones mixes it up and makes it an interesting fight unless he gets taken down early. So should be a good one, and I would be considering that. Once again, a dog or pass situation. Next up, guys, we've got Randy Brown taking on Francisco Masuranduba, Brazilian Redwood, Trinaldo. I'll be honest, James, this is a fight I'm not extremely passionate about. If this fight plays out according to my expectations, it's going to be Randy Brown dictating the pace, dictating the rhythm of this fight. He's a lot longer. He's a lot younger. He's a lot bigger. And I just think that his long-range weapons are going to be so much more potent here than anything that Trinaldo can bring to the table. He doesn't have the same speed to close the gap. Muslim Salikov really exposed him at kicking range. He has very little to offer. And I think that Randy Brown could force him to stay at kicking range with his punches because he's that long. And I also think that Randy Brown is probably a little more dangerous at that kicking range with what he has to offer. The problem is it's a big chalk number, and Randy Brown is not good at dealing with low kicks, calf kicks. He does, compromise his own distance management at times to throw strikes in the pocket, which I think that he might knock out Trinaldo as a result, right? Here's the other thing I'll tell you. If you want somebody to predict Trinaldo to get knocked out and it be wrong every time, that would be me. Because I keep thinking the bottom's got to fall out at some point, James, when he's fighting these big guys at welterweight at 40 something. I think eventually that bill's going to come due and it's probably going to be ugly. This might be the one because Randy's really long and he's got that dangerous, ability to just put a couple strikes together. And, Jared Gooden's a really tough guy. You could put him down, you could put him out, but it's not going to be easy. He's going to try and really stay in the fight if he can. The same kind of thing can be said for a lot of his recent opponents. He buzzed Alex Cowboy Oliveira on the feet before he was able to lock in that choke. And I think that, Randy Brown club and sub, don't think it's outside the realm either. I don't think he's going to if he's not drunk off being hurt, I don't think he's subbing Masur and Duba, right? That's not going to happen. But an older guy who's starting to show a little bit of that just slight dip in durability, he's not going to show it against Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts, unfortunately. One of the dumbest bets I've ever made. I'll own that one. My goodness. Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts doing the chicken dance is one of the images that will scar me as an MMA bettor. I was like, wow, I really laid this guy against Trinaldo. But I do think there's just a huge class difference. He's been fighting these guys who are like, the outside sandbox of the division, and now he's stepping into that top 15-esque realm, and I just don't think he can hack it there anymore at this age. And frankly, you just look through the body of work of Trinaldo, and while it's really impressive, while it's fun, while he's done a lot of great things, he hasn't really beat that many guys at a high level, whereas Randy Brown is beating a lot of age contemporaries who are very good. And if they're not, that good yet, they'll be sticking around in the UFC. A lot of guys Trinaldo's beating are not long for the UFC. For sure. So I think that that's something to keep in mind here as we break down this co-main event of the evening. And I'm curious how you feel about it, James.
Yeah, this is another spot where I feel like the underdog might be a little bit undervalued here. We know what Masur Duba brings to the table. He's a janky fighter. He looks a bit awkward at times. You think someone's going to go out there and kind of beat him, but he manages to pull it off time and time again. I mean, how many fights has the guy lost in like the last 4 or 5 years? Not many. You know what I mean? Even in the fights that he lost, like got beat by Muslim Salikov. He done well in that fight. I think Salikov was like minus 200. Don't think he covered his price tag. He done well in that fight. Jai Herbert fight, a young guy, a long guy, a rangy guy, a good striker, just like Randy Brown. Fought well in that fight, grappled him in that fight, was 1-1 going into the third, gets the knockout in the third. I know he got dropped, I know he got hurt, but he's a good fighter, man. I respect him a lot, Masur Duba. How can you not? Missed weight once in his entire career, instantly moved up to welterweight. I'm not doing this cut on my body anymore. I'm going to fight where I'm, more comfortable. And he's 2-0 at the weight class. He had the Salikov loss, so 2-1. But I feel like in this fight, he's got some advantages, right? We speak about Randy Brown, tall guy, rangy guy, very easy guy to get behind in terms of like a future contender, or not for the belt, but like, a future top 15, top 10 guy. Randy Brown, he's long, he's rangy, he's got good submissions, he's got good in the grappling, he's decent submission game off his back. He's decent submission game from top position. He's got them elbows. He's good at distance control. Seems like he could, come through. His whiskers is good. When he gets a crack, he got hit by the hardest hitting in the division, Chaos Williams, in his last fight. Managed to rally there and, come back and win a clean decision. I bet on him in that fight. I also bet on him via decision in that fight. So I rate the dude, right? But I do think he's a little bit fragile. I think he can be cracked on the feet. I think he has a little bit of that tall man's defense. I feel like even when he's in his flow, he's a little bit susceptible to being hit. Some fighters, when they get in their flow, you're kind of just going to lose the round. Like Javi Basharat, for example. I feel like when he gets in his flow, it seems like he kind of just going to dominate that round. Randy Brown, I've seen a few times he half showboats and then he gets cracked with a big one, So I feel like he's got a bit of that tall man defense. He can be grappled. He can be hurt on the feet. I've seen him grapple bad by Wally Alves. Wally Alves was dominating him in the grappling, took him down multiple times, looked a lot stronger than him. When you get that tall, lanky frame, a lot of times they're not that strong. Now, they got a very good balance and a base, right, sometimes, but in terms of strength, they're not very good. And it seems like Randy Brown, I don't think he's that strong in the grappling. And I think Massaranduba can 100% bank rounds with the takedowns here. Look, I don't know if I'm going to get to the well in terms of backing Massaranduba. The age concern there, I honestly think Randy Brown is extremely live to finish Massaranduba in this fight. If they was giving me more than a plus 150, I'd bet on it. I actually wrote down in my notes, maybe play Randy Brown round 2/round 3. So, split a 0.2 unit on round 2 and round 3. I think it averaged about plus 600, just because I think Massaranduba's, probably going to be able to bank around maybe in that first round with grappling. I think he's smart enough to stay away from Randy Brown. So I wanted to take the plus 150, turn it into like a plus 600 and just lose that first round. If anything, I would go for that route. So I'm torn here, I do feel like Randy Brown has the finishing upside, but I also feel like the money line side is actually Francisco Trinaldo here. So look, I'm going to say that Randy Brown as one of the biggest favorites on the card, minus 350. I'm going to go against the grain and say Massaranduba takes it. I'll probably take a small shot on him, quarter unit or something, just to have some money if indeed I am right and the line is wide. But it's a hard fight for me to pick in general, man, just because we've got such a big favorite.
I completely understand where you're coming from there, my man. This is, for me, a fight that just stood out to me as a pass, right? Because, what they try and do is they give you a side that you think is, pretty clear, right? And you pointed out, right, maybe it's not so clear. Maybe it should be an underdog shot. But if you are looking to play that favorite line, they really give you such a poor number that you're forced to look to that prop market. And then, if you play the plus 150 inside the distance, it's going to end in this decision where he gets rocked 3 times and falls all over the place and you don't get it. And then conversely, if you bet the decision line, it's going to go over 2.5 rounds and then the guy's going to get nuked in the last 2 minutes. Like, you just know how the script goes when you're betting into these prop markets on big favorites. The bookies tend to be sharp on those. They know that's where they're going to get hit and where they're going to have to, kind of hide that vulnerability. So I think that's something to keep in mind when you see extremely wide odds on a high profile fight like the co-main event of the evening. But with that being said, guys, we are taking it to the main event of the evening. Want to say to everybody watching the video right now, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching this. Please go ahead and drop a like on this video. Get subscribed. We do this every week that there's a UFC. I know the channel's been a little inactive. The UFC's been a little inactive. We're going to keep after it and keep bringing out more content for you guys, including some more educational content as well, just about how to improve your game, how I'm trying to improve my game constantly, because if you're not learning and growing, if you're not evolving, you're dying. So got to keep moving forward. Always, that's the goal here. And really big shout out to my man James for always pushing the envelope in that direction as well. Learned a ton from this guy. So if you guys want more information about James, what he has to offer, all his services, third-party tracking, everything like that, it's all in the information box below. The other 2 things I want to mention here before we break down the main event, the sponsors of this show, guys, very simple, very quick, OddsJam. If you guys are betting and you're in an American domestic market or frankly anywhere else, you can benefit from using OddsJam. Compare odds for the same bets that you're going to take. They've got all the different markets. You poke through. Oh, okay. And then you find the best number. Why, if I could get plus 575, would I take a plus 500? It's foolish. I'm just giving away money over time. And so I think in terms of free resources, really beneficial. All the information you need about OddsJam as well in that information box below. And Prize Picks, simplest game in DFS. Use my promo code Liam. They'll deposit match you 100% up to $100. Just wanted to thank the sponsors of the show that make it possible to be here at 4:30 in the evening on the East Coast. And my man James has been putting in some time with us. So want to thank him once again as we kick it to this main event of the evening, strawweight division. James, I got to say, man, this is the most compelling fight of the night. This is a really fascinating matchup. I think it's a well-deserved main event. And man, Mackenzie Dern has been an enigma for me, right? Because I have bet her in the past. Let me pull up my previous bets on opponent. Mackenzie Dern, I bet her for 2.5 units on the money line against Randa Marcos. I bet her for 1 unit on the money line against Verna Jandiroba. So 2 wins there. Every time I have taken it to the prop market, I have lost. I took an inside the distance bet, plus 210 against Tisha Torres. Wasn't able to cash. Had a couple of good positions there. Unfortunate. I also took Mackenzie Dern, wins by sub, wins in round 1, and wins inside the distance, all for very small bets against Marina Rodriguez. I didn't cash a single one of those. And, there's a little bit of narrative, in my opinion, going around about, Mackenzie Dern's the only one that's gone 5 rounds. Yes, she lost the fight. Everybody talks about one takedown and it's over. She got takedowns. She got on top. She got to the position she wanted. She didn't finish. Okay. Tisha Torres fight, doesn't get the takedowns, gets to the grappling situation she wants, doesn't finish. I'm starting to notice a little bit of a theme here. Maybe it's not as one takedown and the fight is over shortly thereafter as we thought. How about the Hannah Cifers fight where she's on top, she falls over the top. Hannah Cifers has a option to exit, and she chooses to engage in the guard and then gets submitted with the knee bar shortly thereafter. Randa Marcos, same decision. I'm going to engage in the guard, get submitted shortly thereafter. A lot of people have made boneheaded decisions against Mackenzie Dern. The people that fought smart, the people that were conservative on the ground, the people that were trying, to really limit ground exchanges and punish when they got back to the feet, they've had some success. And so you're being asked to pay a pretty big chalk price here on Mackenzie Dern. In terms of the rankings for the UFC, this is number 5 versus number 6. Right? Mackenzie Dern, as a matter of fact, is coming off a controversial win in some people's eyes, right? I thought she deserved to win that fight, but it was extremely close, right? Very thin margins with Tisha Torres, who's been a little bit on the outside looking in from, elite title contention of late, certainly. So the question that I would then follow up with is, okay, is she going to get the takedown here? Is she going to get on top? Is she going to find those positions? And is that going to mean it's an insta finish? A lot of people are referencing the Carlos Esparza fight. Carlos' style really couldn't be further from Mackenzie's in a lot of ways. Like Mackenzie, when's the last time she really got on top of somebody and tried to beat the hell out of them? If you've ever seen jiu-jitsu people, that's not really what they do. They try and grab an arm, sit to the side, rotate off, look for a triangle, they're trying to be creative. They're trying to attack. They're trying to move. They're trying to flow. They're trying to create those movements. That kind of gives a little bit of opportunity to escape. Now, I do think the levels are huge here on the ground, but can somebody stall in MMA, hold the gloves, do a little cheating, 2 hands X like this and deal with somebody for 30 seconds taking their back? I mean, yeah, we've seen people do that to really good jiu-jitsu practitioners and stall them out and stuff them and just be contrarian and take a 2-arm baseball grip like this and hold it for the last 20 seconds hidden under, the chest for the round. So all that is to say, I have tremendous respect for Mackenzie Dern. I've bet her in the past. I believe in her upside. She's 29 years of age. She's still coming into her own. She's not training with AKA. She's training with Ruka Gym. When's the last time you've seen a guy from Ruka Gym come out and shoot a beautiful double leg and get on top? They don't do that. They like to clinch. They like to get in there and bang. They like to throw, they like to box. They like to move their head. I'm sure all that will pay dividends over time, but she's going from being a grappler to being a boxer. I would want her to go from being a grappler to a wrestler in terms of my personal path for her development. And yes, she needs to learn how to strike on the feet. And yes, it's going to be good for her long-term to get those minutes on the feet with somebody like Marina Rodriguez. Did you see those minutes on the feet with Marina Rodriguez and Xiaonan? They were much more competitive. Xiaonan was arguably winning those. So you talk about one girl who's the big favorite, is arguably coming off a controversial decision win. The girl who's coming into this fight as the big underdog arguably should have won her last bout as a big underdog. If she had won that fight, she would be 2-0 as an underdog in the UFC. So then you have to start asking yourself, is Mackenzie Dern going to win this fight if it's not by submission? There normally have been pretty closely correlated, her money line with her submission line. We're seeing that again here. She's minus 235 or so on the money line. We're seeing minus 110 on the submission, minus 120, minus 130 on the inside the distance. So it's all chalked out. But I saw plus 110s and whatever it was when she fought Marina Rodriguez. She was a favorite on the money line in that fight. She didn't win that fight. She got to the positions that everybody said it's going to be one position and it's over, and she didn't finish the fight. And she had a subsequent performance where she went out there and had a dominant position and then didn't finish the fight. And so I think she has opportunities to finish the fight here. Maybe that's the matchmaking setup from the UFC, but I don't think Xiaonan signed up to just come out here and get mowed over. Carla Esparza is a much better wrestler than Mackenzie Dern. People might not want to hear me say that, but that's just a historical fact. Like, you could just look at the two of them competing and you could say, oh, if these two girls competed, Carla Esparza takes down Mackenzie Dern today. She probably gets submitted if she does so, but she would take her down and do it easily. That's the truth in terms of their wrestling levels. So I think that people misallocate sometimes wrestling levels. Yes, I think it could be complicated if she gets one bad grappling situation. I acknowledge that. But you're giving me plus 200 on a girl that, if she doesn't get taken down, could look like a hindsight huge favorite. She could just keep her at range with the jab. She could be much more voluminous in her striking. She could mix up her attacks more in terms of kicks and punches. And if she does all those things, she's probably going to look much better. She may even knock out Mackenzie Dern, who's been extremely hittable so far in her UFC career. She's been tough. She's been durable. She's been gritty. She's been getting hit in every fight. That's why we know about those attributes. She's been getting hit and hurt by Amanda Bobby Cooper. It's like the idea that she is invincible, I don't believe in. So I think that Mackenzie's a very talented prospect. I think she has extreme upside in the division. If she puts together a wrestling game that's comprehensive to go with the striking, to go with the grappling, it's going to be dominant. But she's not there yet. I think she's still on the come up. Xiaonan, it's shit or get off the pot. It's time to move right now in the division. She's 33 years of age. And I remember, you remember this too, James, because you've been around this game for a long time. When people were talking about who's the real prospect from China, is it Xiaonan or is it Zhang Weili? Zhang Weili got to the title belt first. She lost it. She's getting another opportunity. She might beat Carla Esparza. And then the question would be, what if Xiaonan wins here? We might get the answer to who is the best prospect from China in that strawweight division. It might take place in China itself. So for me, man, there's just a lot that could go into this matchup. I like the Xiaonan side here from a money line perspective. And I'm not going to lie, I took a small sprinkle on that KO line at plus 800. It's a women's MMA bout. Not a lot of them end by knockout. But I'll tell you what, Marina Rodriguez, not a person that's knocking out a lot of women. But she absorbed a lot of damage on her face from Xiaonan in her last bout. And she's a competent striker, much more competent offensively and defensively than Mackenzie Dern at this stage of their career. So for me, I got to side with Xiaonan here from a money line perspective. I think no harm, no foul if you're taking Mackenzie Dern inside the distance. I understand the rationale. I think you might look like a genius if it cashes in the first round, but I just think that if this fight plays out over any extended period of time, Xiaonan is going to look much more live than the odds indicate. How do you feel, James?
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what you said. Look, we've got a striker versus grappler here, right? It's a classic matchup. We've seen these since the dawn of time. It's something the UFC was made on, right? Strikers versus grapplers, karate versus jiu-jitsu, wrestler versus boxing, whatever you want to call it. And we've got another classic binary matchup here, right? So all we need to look at is Mackenzie going to be able to get the takedowns? And if she can, is she going to finish? And if she can't finish the first time, is she going to be able to get the takedowns consistently? Versus, is Xiaonan going to be able to keep this fight on the feet? It's pretty simple. So then we look at Mackenzie Dern's wrestling chops. They're piss poor. They're almost non-existent, right? She got that one takedown against Nina Nunes, and that's basically it in her entire career, right? Yeah, she's got a couple of other takedowns, Marina Rodriguez, whatever. She got that one nice takedown. She caught the leg and she tripped her. She looked like, oh, she's a wrestler now, right? But after that, her next few fights, she went back to the terrible wrestling, right? So that was more of a lucky, more of a nice little foot sweep than anything else. I feel like Mackenzie Dern will be able to get Xiaonan down just because Xiaonan, in my opinion, has terrible takedown defense. So I do think Mackenzie Dern's going to be able to get her down, but I'm not going to be banking on it at minus 200 like some people are, right? I'd much rather play inside the distance. And even then it's chalked up. So it's a little bit tough, right? You kind of have to look another way of playing it. But look, I feel like she probably will get the takedowns. That's my personal opinion. I don't think they're going to be pretty. I don't even necessarily know if they're going to be takedowns. Maybe she pulls guard. Because one thing we have to know is that she's not just a fighter who's going to go for the takedowns and quit if she doesn't get it. You mentioned these attributes, durable, gritty. The reason why we know that is because she just beat Tisha Torres in a striking fight, right? Now, the reason is because, or I should rephrase that. She just beat Tisha Torres in a fight that never went to the ground, right? It wasn't a striking fight because even though it was on her feet, she made it a grappling fight. A grappling fight on the feet, right? Something we don't see a lot in the UFC. Meaning that when they was in the clinch, she jumped on her back. She tried to jump on her arm. She played jiu-jitsu standing up, right? So we know that she's going to do whatever she can to make it in that grappling realm, whether it's on the feet or on the ground. And I just turned the chats on now, first time I've done it, and I see someone in the chat saying Tisha robbed. I agree with you. I bet on Tisha Torres. So I think she got robbed, right? Inherently. But at the end of the day, Mackenzie Dern won a stand-up fight against Tisha Torres. Very, very admirable. So there is a world where she can't get a takedowns on Yan Xiaonan, but she can pull guard. She can pull Yan into her guard. She can sweep, get on top. She can just win the clinch exchanges, mad flying armbar or something. I don't think the way to look at this fight is the way most people are looking at it, right? I'll give a little bit of a contrary take, which you have done as well, right? So I don't think you can say, okay, if Dern gets the takedowns, she's instantly going to tap Yan. Because I do think Yan's terrible on the ground. And I actually do think she does tap her on the ground. But I don't think it's instant, just as you're saying, right? So that's a contrary take. But on the other side, the Mackenzie Dern side, let's look at that contrarily. Let's say that I don't think that if Mackenzie Dern can't get the takedowns, she's instantly going to lose the round. So just as you're saying, if Mackenzie Dern does get the takedowns, Yan may not instantly lose the round or may not instantly get subbed. I'm saying if she can't get the takedowns, she may not instantly lose the round herself or get finished herself. Because I think, with the grappling chops she has, she may make Yan a little bit scared of the takedowns. And what happens when you're scared of takedowns? What happens when you're scared of grappling? Your striking is not up to par. You mentioned the fight between her and Marina Rodriguez. That's striker versus striker. She's got no takedowns to worry about. So she's popping the jab. She's coming with the 1-2. She's got those low kicks because she hasn't got to worry about the takedowns. Now, if she fights a wrestler or a jiu-jitsu fighter, I don't think she's going to look as good on the feet. I think she's going to be scared of the takedowns. I think Mackenzie Dern is going to land the overhand right that she lands in every single fight. I think Mackenzie Dern has the power edge on the feet in this fight. So I do think that, there's a lot of ways to look at this fight, right? And at the end of the day, I'm just trying to give some contrary takes so people are not so rigid in their view of fights. Because that's very important in MMA, right? You shouldn't be so rigid in your view of a fight. Now, if you have a strong opinion, more power to you. Go to the bank, take some money out, and play the certain position that you have that strong opinion on. But it's very important to be able to see other sides of the story, continually grow, just as you were saying on the last fight, continually evolve that knowledge base. And I just feel like there's a lot of things that people probably misreading in this fight, right? So, bringing it home now, my personal opinion on this fight is that it's 25 minutes. And I think some point Mackenzie Dern is going to find the finish, right? I just think that's going to happen. But there's a lot of things that people have to look into this fight that they may not be looking at. You've mentioned one side of it on the Yan being insta-subbed. And I've mentioned one side on it on Dern being instantly lost if she doesn't get a takedown in the round. So, yeah, man, it's going to be a good fight. I'm excited for it. My prediction is Mackenzie Dern via sub in round 1. She comes out hot in round 1. Yan gets taken down in round 1 all the time. But, hey, this fight could go either way, in my opinion. So if someone wants to take a shot on Yan Xiaonan, more power to them, more power to you. But I do think Dern gets it down one way or another. And I think she gets the submission.
I can't fault you for it, man. The UFC propaganda machine has been talking about the woman around who this card was built. They're not talking about Yan Xiaonan, but one thing that I have historically done to some level of success is try and pick off these main event women's underdogs that don't get as much love, that don't get as much attention, and it doesn't always work. Obviously, my girl Talia Santos got jobbed out on the cards there, but I will say, this is a similar market to Holly Holm and Ketlin Vieira. An underdog I took a lot of grief for cashing publicly. And then in addition, the other fight that it draws to mind is actually Carla and Rose. A very similar market dynamic in that fight, and didn't play out to anybody's expectation, really. So I think that this should be a fun one, should be a good scrap, and I'm just really curious about it. Some of these fight cards, it feels like foregone conclusion. Every method outcome is minus 200 or something like this, and it's really not like that on this card. There's a lot of variability. That's what keeps the sport interesting. That's what keeps this wheel turning. So thank you so much, James. It's been an absolute pleasure, man. I wanted to give you a chance to just let the people know where they could find you, all the great work you've been doing, and just anything you want to get off your chest.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, brother. You're the real trooper here. We should be saying thanks to you because it's 5 a.m. for you and you're still up, still drinking your coffee. Hopefully you have a good sleep tonight, bro. You've been on that coffee all stream. So hopefully you can get your good sleep before the UFC. But yeah, man, thanks for having me on. If anybody's watching now, I guess the thing I'd say is go and follow me on YouTube. You're already on YouTube. So click over to my channel, Lucrative MMA Betting. You can follow me on there. I put out lots of videos just like Liam every week. And a lot more educational content coming on my channel very soon, as I've been saying for a while. So it will come. Stay patient. I got a lot of it coming. If you want to sign up to my handicapping service and get all of my bets and my predictions straight up, you can sign up to me on lucrativemmabetting.com. We've been tracked for 3-4 years now. 290 units profit or something, 12% ROI. It is what it is. Runs are up and down in sports betting, but I've been winning for about 6 years consistently now, and 3-4 of them you can check on betmma.tips, right? So I'm going to continue to win. I love this game. So yeah, man, thanks for all the viewers for watching. Thank you for having me on. Hopefully we cash this weekend. There's a lot of spots I like. 2 cards this weekend, so maybe double the money. So yeah, man, thanks for having me on again, brother. And thank you to all the viewers as always.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to give you that chance, man, because I know you mentioned beforehand that you did have some looks that you like on Bellator. If there's anything that you want to drop for the people, please go right ahead.
Let me see what I got for Bellator, because I've wrote a couple things down. I've already got a few bets in the pipeline. I actually like the Bellator card quite a lot. The Bellator card's probably a better card, than the UFC card this weekend, honestly. We got Spike Carlisle taking on AJ McKee, which is like the best fight in the world, right? And actually, speaking of that fight, I played the over 1.5 there. It's like plus 145. It's going to be an absolute train wreck, So obviously, it could go under 1.5, but I think Spike's very tough. And if AJ McKee don't get you out of there in like a minute, he's a bit underwhelming, I cashed on him, cashed on Patricio Pitbull. And I think we spoke about that in the DMs. We may have done, I'm not sure. But I cashed on Patricio Pitbull big in that fight. I like plus 250 against AJ McKee. And that's just because if he doesn't get the early finish, he doesn't look very overwhelming. He looks underwhelming. So I feel like that fight could sneak over 1.5. I think Pico's going to finish. I think Pico TKO at plus 185 is solid. I give away all my bets now. You guys got to pay for that. But there's a few bet on the prelims as well. There's a few squash matches that we can play the under in. I won't mention what ones because I'm very confident on them. If you want them, sign up to the service. I give out way too much free content as it is. But yeah, there's a couple of bets there if you want to play it.
All love and respect for that, man, and absolutely. Just been worth its weight over time. I always encourage people to check out third-party track records. Go through, look at the bets. See, is this something I want to get on board with? Not every third-party record is made equal. I think that James has an exemplary one. I think that mine is right up there as well. And, that's the reason why I think that we have the audience we have, sharpest chat in the game. Appreciate all you guys for being here. It's got 66 people rocking with us live. It is 4:45 in the East, local time here for me. So, guys, I should probably get to placing some bets. I might have to drive to Jersey to get a couple of these down as well. And tremendous thank you to my man James for coming on. It's been an absolute blast. I could talk fights with this guy from sun up to sundown. And I could talk fights with all you guys from sun up to sundown. So make sure you get subscribed. Come back next week. or excuse me, 2 weeks from now, I think we have another rare 2 UFC off weeks in the same 1 month span. But I believe that we're coming back with a vengeance the week following. Big pay-per-views coming up, so you're not going to want to miss it. Truly appreciate everybody for being here. God bless you all. Enjoy those fights. Come back next time. Gonna have all the same fun again. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.